Thank you all for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I think the first thing I wanted to start off with saying why we made Johnny in black and white. And I have to say that one of the main reasons for me was redemption. I felt like I owed it to Keanu and William because as a first-time director, I had no power. I got pushed around. It was really fucking hard. It was a torturous experience, and I never got to make a director's cut. So I think what this is, the black and white version, is as close to possible as the way I imagined it. So I guess it's more direct. I'll call it the director's intention cut for now. But I mean, I'm curious about your reactions to the black and white film for sure. And I mean, I've seen it screened with people recently, and I'm really impressed with the reactions for sure. But I want to know about your reactions to the black and white film.
Well, first of all, that is to hear, you know, the redemption story, but to have the experience that you had as a filmmaker. It's unfortunately a feeling and a sentiment that a lot of filmmakers have had. So in that sense, welcome to show business. But yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I didn't, you know, I didn't feel that making the film with you. I mean, I know that there was some frustrations, but in terms of like making the film, I didn't feel that. So I'm grateful to you that I got to have the opportunity to work with you and to be able to feel creative and free and to feel a partnership and not have these other pressures or limitations. So I really appreciate that. And even with all of that, I still think you made a very special film. And I think it's very cool in black and white.
Oh, it's so much better. It's insane. It's like it's a completely different movie. It's like, it's not comic booky. It's a film noir. It's kind of grungy. It has guts to it. It has a bit of gravitas to it. So William, what was your reaction?
Well, I was, first it was like, you know, every frame could be hanging in my living room wall if it was like every frame was a Longo to an extent that I had never been able to recognize in color. Like I really saw your hand in it, and that was great. And it also reminded me that when we started, like when you first got in touch with me, when we started, we were talking about making this little art film. So I was able to start that screenplay and pretty much go through it as though I wasn't doing a Hollywood film. It's like I wasn't worried about commercial concerns or, you know, who would like it or who wouldn't like it. And I'm not sure that I've ever had that feeling since. I don't think I have. I know I haven't actually writing a screenplay. And I liked it so much that I think it actually affected my later fiction. I know it did. Like I started writing things that were more overtly comic and satirical than I would have been willing to before.
Yeah. Making that movie, I knew that we had this evil producer in the background. I know that he had plans to fire me. It was just like every day arguing. It was just like, oh, it was so awful to fight for shots. And, you know, originally the guy who wanted to shoot the movie for us was Michael Chapman, who did Raging Bull, but he couldn't do it because he wasn't Canadian. And the DP that we ended up with, his major credit was Weekend at Bernie's.
A classic.
So it's really funny. There are scenes in the movie where I remember there was a scene in the wasteland where Johnny arrives and he has to get out of the car and meet the guys, you know, Baldy and the other guy, the guy, cowboy guy, and that I wanted the camera tipped, you know, so it's this kind of like really kind of, you know, kind of expressionistic look, and I had to do it after, yeah, thank you. After we had to call lunch, I cranked the camera myself, crooked. And then as soon as he got back, I called action, so he couldn't correct the camera. It was like, that was what the experience was like. It was like every time to try to get a shot that I wanted, it was like I had to like fucking explain everything. It's also interesting, this idea of what happened, you know, the movie got so, you know, a lot of bad press and it was awful. And at the same time, you know, while we were making this movie, Keanu became this gigantic star from Speed, and TriStar, our movie was supposed to come out like in February or something. It kind of supposed to be like this little weird little movie, and all of a sudden, their summer movie was, I think, called Mary Riley. It was in complete disaster at that point. So they decided to make our movie the summer movie. So Johnny Mnemonic opened the weekend against Batman and Die Hard, which I thought was so bizarre. So in that sense, the process of making that film and the history of that film is in itself is so bizarre. But William knows this more than you do, Keanu, because we went through these writing sessions with people that were studio people that were telling William how to write the script.
So sometimes you would kind of want to turn to these people and go like, why do you want to make this movie again? You seem to hate it.
What I thought was interesting too, Keanu, is I realized with that movie, when we had to redo that shoot that opening scene. What was interesting, I realized through the course of the film, I watched what you were eating. You were always eating like rice cakes and peanut butter, and I realized you were losing weight through the course of the film. And I thought this was so brilliant. You were like sculpting yourself into stress mode. So by the end of the movie,
yeah, because his brain is eating his brain, and he's like breaking down.
Oh, it's that was so great. So then, what's so ironic is when we had to go back and shoot that first scene, which both William and I were going, oh no, it's not supposed to be like that. You had gained some weight back, which was kind of perfect. It's like you know, it worked out really well in that sense. But I remember that opening scene. William and I were trying to figure out how to write that scene where it didn't seem so stupid, you know. It was really.
Well, it was cool because you kind of turned that male call girl experience on its head, where you have the male kind of like yearning for more companionship and connection, and he's being left, and he's kind of more alone and feels lonely, and and then the job comes. So it was subversive in that sense.
It ends up working out okay. I don't mind it. I mean, I did like it.
Yeah.
William, when you wrote the movie, originally the idea would be like, we would just start the movie like in the riot, you know, and you didn't know who this guy was or anything like that. I remember you mentioned that you wanted him to be kind of nihilistic from the beginning.
Oh, I got there.
Yeah. You totally got there.
He's a romantic character, and I think the black and white leans into that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I think the black and white is romantic, and I think the film is romantic. I mean, it's romantically aspirational. Every character wants a better world. Every character is in love or trying to do the thing that they love, but are being stopped or controlled, or there's something in their way and they're trying to kind of break through that, but they're in love with it.
Yeah.
You know? Every character loves the tech, but hates the tech. The character wants to be great at being a fighter, but isn't good enough, you know? Dolph Lundgren is trying to, like, you know, spread the word of Jesus through killing people and taking off their heads, right? Ralphie just wants to be successful and wants to be in control, but he's always another fall guy. I mean, like, every character is yearning and pining and has some kind of obstruction, and I think it's romantic in that sense. And I think the black and white really kind of, you know, Robert, you mentioned film noir, and that's a romantic genre too. And so I don't know, I feel that a lot. I feel that romance of the piece much stronger in the black and white than the color.
Yeah, for sure. But I also, William, in relationship, I fell in love with the original short story, the way it started, where this guy is building a shotgun and sticking in a gym bag. So the closest I ever got to creating that scene was when Johnny takes apart the gun when he meets J-Bone. You know, that was
Yeah.
like that was a bit homage to it. But how do you feel about the short story in relationship to the way the movie came out? Because the movie is like, it seemed like we kind of basically kind of stole from everything you'd written before, you know, after Johnny. We kind of added into things into it.
Something I've recognized subsequently in, you know, the many years of meantime was that I started the story comes from, it's pre-Neuromancer, and then I had written the 2 other books that are in the Neuromancer world. And for me, that was like I had worked through some kind of aesthetic cycle. And people were starting to make movies that looked like that. And I wanted, you know, I wanted to go somewhere else. So when you got me started writing this screenplay, that was where that energy went. It freed me up, and it was really good for my fiction to do that.
When we did that upload and we gave you all those props and how you put stuff together, I was so amazed at how you adapted and invented stuff at time on the fly. You know, even the scene in the bathroom when you do that. I mean, I remember in William's script, it was just like, it just said something to the effect he does some kind of like yoga thing or something like that. And you were like, what do I do? It's like, it was so beautiful.
Well, no, because I got to play with shapes, you know, I got to play with shapes and the angularity of the character and being influenced by Your Man in the Cities and making those shapes and taking yoga, but what would be Johnny's yoga and what would be control and tying that into how he would operate, you know, the neural systems and for his kind of virtual control in the digital world. So for me, creatively, that was great to work out with you. And I remember there was one detail where the sink, you know, it was like you just pulled your hands away from underneath the faucet and the water would stop. And I had never seen that before. And I was like, oh, wow, science fiction. You know?
It was also,
like,
that was one of the moments where I had the big fight with the producer. I was saying, I have to have the shot from above. You know, when he kind of like comes in and kind of collapses, and you collapse so perfectly in that moment. There were these moments where there are these shots that to me I had to fight for that are so important in that movie. That was one of them for sure. But the other thing was,
and for me, working with you in your camera in that space was so much fun, man. Like to do that, for you to say I need this top shot, and for me to go like, okay, how can we do that? What shapes can we make? How can we tell this character story?
Do you guys have any favorite scenes in particular?
I love Johnny's rant under the bridge. I love the room service.
Oh, it's the best.
I want room service!
As I wrote it, he was just being kind of pissy and hissing at her, and it didn't take advantage of where they were or anything. And when I first saw that it was like this huge kind of thing below the bridge. I don't know, it's just like a wonderful balance of everything.
That scene wasn't originally in the movie, and I remember calling you up and telling you we need a scene, because we need a scene where he's freaking out. And I had this image like, I make this mound of earth that looks like he's standing on the earth. And Keanu, you did such a great job with that. The amount of times that I had people come up to me literally acting out, I want room service. It's that one. The other one is I remember in Berlin, there were these black hackers, these like serious, like, you know, hacker guys, and they come up to me and goes, I need a computer. It's like, there are all these, like, you know,
a computer.
all these expressions that were so great.
I need a computer.
Also, the computer shop, when you did this stuff with the computer, you had no idea what you were doing with that computer stuff, and we ended up making it fit your gestures, and that was so beautiful how you went with it. You went with us with this invention. I thought that was really great. You did it so well, and I remember the whole idea of cyberspace was so much based upon William's descriptions, you know, of this basically another world that it existed, you know, and those guys that, I think it was actually Sony that actually did the cyberspace for sure, and that I thought was really beautiful. I mean, what do you think, William? Did it look like what you thought cyberspace looked like?
Yeah, At that point, it looked more like it than anything I'd ever seen.
So, Keanu, you got any favorite scenes?
I got a bunch, but you know, for me, I like the opening from the hotel room into the riot, through the hotel lobby, into the elevator, past the twins, the fishbowl head, into the upload, to the post-upload, and then Johnny escaping. Is that one scene? Yeah, because I think you get kind of everything about that character in the world. You know, you get Ralphie, you get the kind of the pirate video, you get the renegades, the rebels, and you get nerve attenuation syndrome. You get the context of the world and this one character in it. And you get also the abstractness, like the guy's head in the fishbowl and the extension that, you get some cinema.
The fishbowl was really cool, yeah.
You're telling so much story and you're letting the audience into this world, and, it's interesting, and the guy's jacking in, he's uploading the memory, and he's still doing it, biting down. I just thought it had a lot of energy, a lot of ideas, was cinematically interesting, and it was fun.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites for sure. I love the guy with the noodles hanging out of his mouth when you finish this thing. It's so great.
Yeah, it's just like
it was so great. William was telling me this story about how that idea that she had to cut his hand with. You made that tip for that knife.
Yeah, on the end of her whip, she's got this kind of fishing rod thing that has a knife blade on the end. When I heard there was going to be a close-up where they showed the actual sharp tip, I jumped in the way and got this knife maker guy to make the sharp tip.
I was always curious about where that came from. I never knew that. The other thing is that the set of Heaven was so extraordinary. We have to give props up to Nilo Rodis. He was amazing. He was like a priest on the set. He was always my conscience. He tried so hard to make the things the way I wanted. But do you remember that it's as far as like almost like an art installation, that thing in that hangar where they had built literally Heaven, like it was like 20 feet up in the air. It was all,
yeah.
And it was all on these wooden posts that were on rubber tires, so everything moved, and it was so spectacular. It was the most amazing thing. I always felt it must have been really dangerous to build it and stuff like that. But your concept of this thing of being inside of a bridge was wild. But him making it actually really happen was quite amazing. Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that.
The other thing is the plague. I mean, now that we actually this idea that did you ever imagine when you wrote this thing how prescient it was? I mean, that the NAS hospital and stuff like that. It's like we're living in this world right now. It's so it's like being in a Bruegel painting or something like that. With like we're all wearing these face diapers and things like that. I happen to have one right here, right now. It's like, I mean, it's so weird how much this movie kind of like talks about what is happening now.
It's a mystery to me how that works. Sometimes I think I got the NAS in because I had a sneaking suspicion that computers and everybody having computers and computers turning into this global thing was bound to have some downsides. So I made it symbolically like a disease, like it affected their nervous systems. It was like a neurological disease. And it's just very strange how it works now in terms of you're looking at something that's made that long ago, and it does feel, very contemporary in some ways.
It's kind of like as artists, I always think that we have the Cassandra curse, We can see the future, but nobody wants to listen to us in one way or another. But I thought, yeah, it's interesting in that sense. I want to go on to talk about the final downloads when Johnny goes to heaven and Jones. I mean, The dolphin was so great, and Keanu's reaction to the dolphin was so great. I don't think that's in the script when you say it's a fish. That I thought that was like
It's
so
a
great.
fish.
It's a fish.
It was so great.
It's a fish.
It was like, what the fuck? Any other scenes that you guys liked?
Yeah, I mean, I really like the scene with Henry Rollins and Dina when she's, you know, when he does the speech about, you know, this does it and this does it. What are you, Johnny? And
This causes it. This causes it. Information overload. All the electronics around you poisoning the airwaves.
you know, when you hear the kind of lowdown about what NAS is.
The thing with Anna is like, that character was so much bigger in the original script. I mean, the idea that someone is dead, but they downloaded their neural net persona to like the company. And I remember when we shot that last scene when she gives the whole explanation that Pharmacom is trying to like, they don't want to cure the disease. They make more money treating the disease. And there was this great scene between Keanu and Barbara that we watched them act out. It was so beautiful, but a lot of it never made it into the movie. It's really weird about, as an actor, like the amount of stuff that you do and how you never know what's going to end up on the screen, you know? It must be crazy frustrating. Okay.
I mean, it could be heartbreaking, but it's also, as you get into it, you know that, you know, there's a movie that gets written, there's a movie that gets pre-produced, there's a version of the film that gets shot, and there's a version of the film that gets edited, and then there's a version of the film that gets screened, and then it turns into the version that people experience, and then it goes black and white. So
We shot this pretty much almost in order. It was great, which enabled Keanu to lose weight, which I thought was impressive.
yeah, and I mean, I think also the scenes with Udo were fun. Udo Kier as Ralphie.
Oh, yeah.
When he says, "Not in the head," it's so great.
You know.
Not on the head!
Yeah, for me, I just love every scene. I mean, I think there's always so much to play, and you know, Johnny's always pissed off and struggling, and so it was always fun. Remember all those hospital, like the triage scene and stuff like that? And
What was interesting about that scene is like Don Carmody was kind of like the good producer. He tried to help me get things that I wanted. I remember trying to explain to him, we need this overhead crane shot of the train station where it's like Gone with the Wind, where they come up the stairs and then all of a sudden it's like, you see this gigantic scene. And Don actually pulled strings and got me a crane. He was a good guy.
did you color correct it the same way as you color corrected it the first time?
Well, what we did is I worked with this guy, Cyrus, the editor. We literally went scene by scene, almost frame by frame to shape it so so I realized black and white films always look like gray to me. So I wanted this to be really black and white. So it was a pretty complicated process, but it was like, he's amazing. He did a great job. He's a filmmaker on his own as well, so.
How was the music on the film?
Whoa, that's a long story. I was waking up this morning and going like, God, if I could change the music, that would be great. But the music's okay.
50 years. We did 25, now we're gonna do 50, and we'll change the music.
I think that's great. And then we'll do another one of these
Cinematic
videos.
facelift.
We'll do another one of these commentaries. Remember 50 years ago? It'd be perfect, I know. Be great.
The animatronic. Oh, and the last day of filming. The last day. I think the last day was on the last day of the film. Where we're in heaven and we're looking out and it's supposed to be the fireworks and everything on fire. I don't think I've ever shot the last scene of a film on the last day. Hey, before we finish, I just want to say thank you, Robert, for doing this.
Thank you, man.
And thank you, William, for doing this, and it was really great to see you. And I
thank
wish
you
I
all
saw
for coming.
more of you.
Keanu in Paris, William in Vancouver, and I am in New York. How high tech is it?
September 28th, 2021.